Nigeria's Governors Forum recommits to better response capacity to fight COVID-19 pandemic.
And the Speaker, Gbajabiamila Miller, holds legislative diplomacy bilateral meeting with Ghanaian lawmakers over Ghana-Nigeria trade dispute.
And 125 new cases of COVID-19 reported in 13 states across Nigeria.
The governor of Ogun State, Dapo Abiodun, has been urged to keep faith with the next level agenda and remain focused on the implementation of his people-centered policies and programs.
President Muhammadu Buhari made the remark while granting audience to the governor in his office. State House correspondent Adamu Sambu reports.
Governor Dapo Abiodun was in the State House to present to President Muhammadu Buhari the first copy of a compendium which chronicles his genuine efforts at transforming the Gateway State for a sustainable future in his first year in office. The governor used the opportunity to inform the Nigerian leader of the desire of his administration to reconstruct the federal route leading to what he called the nation's biggest industrial hub, the Agbara Industrial Estate.
This route has continued to become an embarrassment, not just to us in Ogun State, but the entire country. This place is important to us for the economic survival of our state and the country at large. We have decided to intervene in this route ourselves as a state. I wanted Mr. President to know that we are going to have to construct that route at our expense, and I wanted him to inform the Federal Ministry of Works that we will be doing so, and we will also be making demands on them for a full refund of the construction of that road.
He also reminded the president of the earlier request by Ogun and Lagos state governments to take over and commercialize the Lagos-Ota Abeokuta road.
The federal government cannot afford to build all the roads at the same time. We can take that burden off the federal government. And I'm glad to say that Mr. President was very pleased with these discussions and these applications, and he's promised to see what he will do to give us the necessary support so that, this can also help us in the economic upliftment of our region.
It was also an opportunity for Governor Abiodun to give his impression of President Muhammadu Buhari.
Mr. President is so meticulous, he's so methodical, he's extremely organized. And at any point in time, any governor wants to see the president, all you have to do is ask, and the president will give you audience. He will give you audience, he will take notes. And for those of us that know the president, he's someone who believes in constituted authority. So when a governor says, these are my problems, the president takes it to heart and he follows through with it. One cannot ask for a better captain of our ship. That is what I have seen in Mr. President, and that is what I probably think that most people will not know, because Mr. President is not a man of many words.
The governor described the recent increase in the pump price of petrol as well as electricity tariff as inevitable. From the State House, Adamu Sambu, NTA News.
And Vice President Yemi Osinbajo is tasking the media on reporting of virtual court proceedings as he joins the conversation on the question around reporting of virtual court proceedings, which he describes as a crucial exercise of the right to fair hearing. State House correspondent Jide Onifade tells you more.
I think that an opportunity that this offers us is to get rid of as much technicality as possible. This is the opportunity that we're offered. And I'm so pleased that the Supreme Court did not even hesitate in saying that, well, as far as we're concerned, virtual proceedings are legal. I've been very...
Attorneys General of Lagos and Ekiti States kickstarted the conversation when they approached the Supreme Court to determine whether, having regard to the constitutional requirement that court proceedings must be held in public by the use of technology or remote hearing. The decision of the Supreme Court was that this is constitutional. But Vice President Yemi Osinbajo sounds a note of warning here to media practitioners that there is limit to this.
What perhaps practice directions may have to address? What are the limits? Clearly, no one is allowed except with permission to publish live proceedings of a court. But, we need to really determine how this will work. We need to ask the relevant questions. And I think that in developing these practice directions, the media has to very quickly occupy the space.
The last may not have been hard on this conversation, as the Vice President notes more works still need to be done to arrive at a system towards having justice. The webinar was organized by Gavel International in the State House. Jide Onifade, NTA News.
And the Minister of Petroleum Resources, Temipre Silva, has urged Nigerians not to politicize the deregulation of the downstream subsector of the industry.
Silva, who calls for understanding, says the temporary hardship from the price hike, which is a consequence of market forces, will ease off compared to the benefits that Nigerians will soon experience. Lydia Sampson has more.
Price fluctuation is the normal in a deregulated oil and gas sector. This is because in reaction to the dictates of demand and supply, prices may rise or fall. Ironically, with the rise comes inherent difficulties, which experts are quick to acknowledge are only temporary.
You all know Mr. President's alignment with the position of the poor people in Nigeria. He has always been on the side of the poor people. And left to Mr. President, I am very certain that he will never have increased pump price. But for this to happen, we must understand that this must be an inevitable policy direction, especially at this time of COVID-19. COVID-19 saw oil prices at the zero zone, something that has never happened before, at the negative zone.
The minister said already plans are on the way for all NNPC retail stations to go beyond selling of petrol to alternatives like diesel and other products to ease the harsh impact. He said as part of efforts at engagement, the ministry has set up a complaint box for dissatisfied customers to drop complaints. In Abuja, Lydia Sampson, NTA News.
And now the Nigeria Governors Forum is leveraging on COVID-19 interventions to increase response capacity to the fight against the pandemic and sustaining more commitment for the reopening of critical sectors of the economy under the new normal.
And our correspondent Abubakar Usman Akwanga reports that this was contained at the 16th communique of the Forum's study conferencing on COVID-19 pandemic.
The NGF, in collaboration with Ministry of Health, is to release basic healthcare provision fund to eligible states to sustain services in healthcare delivery during the coronavirus pandemic. The forum noted the need to increase testing of COVID-19 as the economy gradually reopens and schools prepare to resume, as well as the conduct of elections in some states. The 36 state governors were commended by Rotary International for the seamless coordination of immunization in their states and received a Rotary International Polio Certification Award for their roles in eradication of the virus in Nigeria. The communique also reveals that State's Fiscal Transparency, Accountability and Sustainability Program is introducing a new project with 50% properties to support states to implement 2021 urban electrification projects. Governors are also expected to nominate focal persons to interface with the Ministry of Petroleum Resources on the actualization of the National Gas Expansion Program, and states governments through their Internal Revenue Services how to ensure seamless implementation of tax relief program for businesses and taxpayers. The Nigerian Governors Forum Technical Committee is working to finalize an acceptable framework for the implementation of the Executive Order 10. In Abuja, Abubakar Usman Akwanga, NTA News.
And the Nigerian Center for Disease Control, NCDC, has announced 125 new cases of COVID-19 in Nigeria. The latest figures released brings the total number of confirmed cases to 54,588 infections in the country. A breakdown of the new cases from 13 states indicates that Lagos recorded the highest number for the day with 42 new cases, while FCT has 25, Katsina 14, Kaduna 11, Kwara 8, and Ondo State 7. Others are Delta with 4, Anambra and Oyo states recorded 3 cases each, while Edo, Ogun State and Osun recorded 2 cases each. The day's tally is completed by Cross River State recording 1 single case. Confirmed cases by state, Lagos has the highest with 18,219, followed by the FCT with 5,238, and Oyo comes third with 3,139 cases. With the latest development, total number of active cases stands at 10,912, while 42,627 cases have been successfully treated and discharged, while unfortunately 1,048 patients have died.
Well, this is probably the lowest we have recorded so far. Kudos to this team. Meanwhile, the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 has announced Nigeria's transition into the third phase of the ease on restrictions for a period of 4 weeks, with effect from today, Friday, the 4th of September.
And during the new phase, the nationwide curfew is still in force, but now from 12 midnight to 4 a.m. Mitari Ikpen has more on this.
Following the consideration of the PTF's 7th interim report by President Muhammadu Buhari, the third phase of the ease of lockdown will be for the next 4 weeks, with continuation of the nationwide curfew. Meanwhile, railway services are to resume fully, markets are to resume fully on all days, mass gatherings are allowed for only 50 persons, while amusement parks, gyms and event centers can now reopen at half capacity. Bars and nightclubs are, however, to remain closed, while public and civil servants below grade level 12 are still advised to work from home.
Schools remain closed as far as the PTF is concerned, but what we intend to do is to work with state governments as well as the federal to make sure that a proper risk assessment is made of every school that will open. That's the most important element. If you say every school open, different schools will have different levels of compliance. So the first stage is for state authorities to look at the level of preparedness of their schools.
The PTF believes that while Nigeria is not ready for full reopening of the economy, there has been sufficient progress to warrant significant further relaxation of the restrictions applied. The main thrust of the recommendation is that Nigeria advances to the third phase of ease restrictions with further amendments to address economic, socio-political, and health concerns.
The Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 took the national briefing to the new international terminal of the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport as a statement of confidence that all is set for the resumption of international flights this Saturday. Some airlines are, however, barred from flying into the country.
Number one, Air France is not approved. Now, the reason for Air France is that tourist visa holders are not allowed entry. KLM not approved for the same reason as Air France.
The initial 6-month mandate of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, which will elapse this September, has been extended to December 2020 by President Muhammadu Buhari. In Abuja, Mitari Ikpen, NTA News.
Now, this is the news at 10 on NTA News 24, reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Still ahead.
Positive outlook for the Naira as Nigeria's Apex Bank intervenes. All the details are just ahead on Business News.
For now, the best and most efficient way to avoid getting infected is through regular hygienic and sanitary practices, as well as social distancing. As individuals, we remain the greatest weapon to fight this pandemic. by washing our hands regularly with clean water and soap, disinfecting frequently used surfaces and areas, coughing into a tissue or elbow, and strictly adhering to infection prevention control measures in health facilities, we can contain this virus.
It's good to have you back with us. Now, let's bring you up to speed on business. The Central Bank of Nigeria's intervention in the importer and exporter window is fast affecting the naira positively against the dollar in the money market. Now, let's take more on business news.
On Monday, the Central Bank of Nigeria began to clear the estimated foreign exchange demand backlog of $2 billion by selling $25 million directly to banks on a daily basis until the backlog is cleared. The central bank also sold $5 million at the investors and exporters window on Tuesday and Wednesday, pumping some much-needed forex back into the financial system. This week has seen the dollar sell on the parallel market at 430 naira on Wednesday and 440 naira yesterday, recovering from last week's peak of 477 naira. Foreign portfolio investors are convinced that once the foreign exchange backlog has been cleared, business as usual will be completely restored. Mr. Isaac Okorafor, the CBN Director of Corporate Communications, confirmed the clearance, saying that the CBN needed first to fully understand the depth of the situation before intervening. Now let's see how the stock markets performed on Thursday, September 3rd, 2020. With business news, I'm Ronami Egirani.
All right, welcome back. Now, 4 months to the end of the current Vision 2020 and the Economic Recovery Growth Plan, critical players and subnationals are keying into the new medium-term national development plans.
That is right. And Chimobi Walton Naju reports that this was made known by the Minister of State Budget and National Planning, Clem Agba, while giving a scorecard of the policies and sectoral performance.
Inauguration of the technical and central working groups from the medium-term national development plan are immediate steps taken by the Budget and National Planning Ministry to ensure there is no vacuum in government plans and policies. The macroeconomic framework report already submitted by the Technical Working Group was key to the development of the new medium-term economic framework 2021 to 2023, which forms the basis for the preparation of the 2021 budget. While addressing journalists on the new policy direction, Minister of State...
Avoid a vacuum, approved and directed Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning
and peculiarities from both national and subnational entities.
These steps were all taken in the beginning to ensure that henceforth annual budgets are derived from national development plans, thereby fostering plan discipline in successive years. We intend to deepen consultation with subnational governments to ensure that plan discipline is entrenched in the system if we are to make the desired changes in the economy.
Not unaware of the demands and the overwhelming nature of this assignment, most especially with the prevailing COVID-19 pandemic, which has made it impossible for the groups to have physical meetings. However, work is progressing via adoption of virtual meetings.
The minister noted that the plan, when fully implemented, will serve as a policy directive in areas of agriculture, manufacturing, transportation, housing and urban development, education and health, among many others, to ensure government trail focused and sustainable growth. In Abuja, Chimobi Walton Naju. NTA News.
Now let's take you to Kebbi State, where experts from the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, have carried out on-the-spot assessment visit to some communities ravaged by the flood in that state.
And this is in line with the federal government's directive for necessary measures towards mitigating the impact of the massive flood that, of course, hit the state. Here is Nura Tanko Wakili with the rest of the story.
The team, which comprised officials from the National Emergency Management Agency, Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and the Nigerian Air Force, was in Kebbi State following a presidential directive to identify with the victims and assess the level of devastation by the disaster, which claimed lives and destroyed properties, including farmers' huge investment in agricultural production worth billions of naira. This dashed the dreams of farmers who envisaged bumper harvest and displaced many communities from their settlements.
We least expected this disaster to come at this time, but unfortunately it came when we were about to harvest, and that's why the farmers are demoralized.
Containing this requires swift action, and the team was on hand to assess areas of intervention.
The Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, and the DG NEMA, they should have been here themselves, but because of other national assignment, they have asked us to come to carry out an assessment. And we have seen what has happened, very devastating indeed.
Thank Mr. President for his concern and sympathy to Kebbi State about this flooding.
Over 500,000 hectares of farmlands spread across more than 300 kilometers were affected, and President Muhammadu Buhari described this as a major setback on the country's quest for self-sufficiency in food production. Nuretanko Akili, NTA News.
Now let's go to roads infrastructure. Now the Minister of Works and Housing, Babatunde Fashola, has engaged federal controllers of works across the 36 states of the country and the FCT to bring them up to speed with government's expectations on timely delivery of ongoing road projects. At a webinar with the controllers, the minister tasked them to take ownership of the roads in their domains and ensure regular supervision of the projects to ensure that contractors deliver on schedule, while emphasizing on government's huge investment in road infrastructure. The Minister of Works and Housing says controllers must act quickly in the event of distress on any road to ensure its rehabilitation, as government is committed to providing motorable roads across the country.
Built roads, no matter how well-built roads are, no matter how well-maintained they are, the forces of nature, climate change, unpredictable rainfall, windstorm, hurricanes across the world, they damage our infrastructure. Wear and tear also damage our infrastructure. So we want you to be the first responders there. So when these things happen, we expect our controllers as our points of service to be the first people there to assure people that, oh, government is already aware that this problem has occurred. Announce what measures you want to take to give immediate relief.
Meanwhile, damaged portion of Riga Chukun Bridge has been repaired and open to motorists. Now there is free flow of traffic on Kaduna-Zaria Express Road, which linked Kaduna town to northwestern part of the country. Prior to the repairs of the damaged portion of the bridge, travelers experienced serious gridlock.
Now, President Muhammadu Buhari has directed the Federal Ministry of Agriculture to release 5,000 tons of grains of maize from the National Strategic Grains Reserve to poultry farmers. The directive was conveyed to the Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, Mohammed Sabo Nanono, in a letter from the State House signed by the Chief of Staff to the President, Professor Ibrahim Gambari. The minister says the grains will be released to poultry farmers at a subsidized rate of 19,000 naira per metric ton, as against the current market price of 170,000 naira. Nanono assures that the ministry will immediately comply with the presidential directive in order to salvage the huge investment of about 10 trillion naira in the industry. The poultry industry accounts for about 27% of the agricultural gross domestic product of the economy and provides about 20 million direct and indirect employments.
And lifting millions of Nigerians out of poverty is one task that the federal government is bent on doing. And this is as a result of the 40% of Nigerians that are said to live below the poverty level.
And in view of this, the government is evolving modalities to come up with the blueprint that will assist in eradicating poverty in the country. Comfort Amodi reports that the Interministerial Expert Technical Committee has been saddled with this task.
According to the National Bureau of Statistics, more than 82 million Nigerians live on less than $1 a day, with 40% living below the poverty line of 107,430 naira a year. The quest to eradicate poverty necessitated President Muhammadu Buhari's commitment to lift 100 million Nigerians out of poverty within the next 10 years. The Interministerial Expert Technical Committee, constituted to ensure proper planning and coordination, concluded its 3-day meeting with the prospect of warehousing all poverty eradication projects of the federal government.
We might have made progress, but those progress we cannot actually refer to any one of them today. And we still have poverty, and this committee is out to work out modalities on how to realize Mr. President initiatives.
There is over 100 billion right now in carbon trading for Africa only. What it means, prove you have done some project locally for climate change adaptation, create a certificate of emission reduction by inviting the UNFCCC to come and verify what you are doing to save carbon.
The committee intends to harness the economic potentials in cottage industries, agro-processing and special interventions to create more employment within the year through 2023. In Abuja, Comfort Amodu, NTA News.
And the news at 10 is broadcast on NTA News 24, and we are reaching you on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Still ahead.
Focal persons present scorecards to the humanitarian ministry. Details in a moment.
COVID-19 transmission is mostly through droplets from sneezing.
Hello and welcome. It's time for another interesting package of
Everything Music.
Angelina, you dey cool in my temperature. If you call, I go come deliver.
This is Talking Movies.
In times of old, the world was full of wonder.
No.
Stop it! Welcoming you to your weekend for today.
Arise, oh, compatriots. It's time to use our voice.
Beyond 6 packs.
Bills.
Pay the bills. Keep paying my telephone bills. Pay my bills.
Welcome to Gallery.
Me and my party.